Welcome to Thoughts Roundup. I have a cup of coffee and 2 or 3 notes. And I want to talk to you further about Hineston, that thriving metropolis. You got to know about Hineston, and I want you to get it from the horse's mouth. So it'd be just right. Hineston. I guess I told you probably that there was no traffic light there. Just Hineston. Well, it started off with one store, Crawford Johnson's store. Then it added Andy Johnson's store across the road. Different Johnsons. Well, that was about all there was to it. You know, the Rodeo Grounds is right there. Ted Johnson's Rodeo Grounds. You'll see that there. Well, I did the first bit of work on that rodeo grounds. I was probably about 15 years old. I was working for Teddy Johnson in the store. And he said to me, get the sling blade and go out and I'll show you where I want you to cut the weeds. It's fixing to start putting fence for the rodeo. They was making the post out of old cross ties. That's pretty famous. Ted Johnson's rodeo is pretty famous in a way. Most cowboys, most bronc riders and all that know anything about, they know about Teddy Johnson's rodeo. Probably have all of them's ridden in it. And you know, we had 2 people that I went to school with that became famous to a degree. We had a Lewis boy, and I believe they call him Sonny Lewis. And we had Laverne Perry. Went to school with both of them. They became, I believe, Vern Perry, I believe he won a silver saddle in Madison Square Garden. You see, Hineston's spreading already. You never know. You never know. No, you don't have to have a traffic light to have a great place. You don't have to have a traffic light to have somebody famous raise up. Not at all. You know, I want to mention that we have a library in Hineston. We do. Now, that was an afterthought, many years ago, afterthought. We never thought of ever growing like that, is to have a library. Rapides Parish Library. You see, we didn't have counties, we had parishes. And that's where my wife and I, they asked for us, they wanted a copy of our books that we had written. And I want to tell you, whenever they got the books, they couldn't keep them in the regular shelves. They had to put O.C. and John Marler's books out on a table because people were coming and asking for them and pressing for them. And I tell you, that made us feel good. We couldn't believe it. Well, I went back later, and my books was up in the regular shelves and so forth. And I said to the girl there, she was my cousin, I said to her, I said, you know, I don't believe people's checking out my books like our books like they were. She said, oh, see, everybody that knew you is dead and gone. She said, nobody walks through that door that I know hardly at all. Now that's how things change. Go down the hill and turn right, and you go to the Fellowship Methodist Church, and behind that is where we all are buried. And did you know when COVID hit, that's when my wife died, not with COVID, but she passed away during COVID season. And I had 6 grave plots in the cemetery, and I didn't carry her home. Number one, it would have been almost impossible. Number two, we couldn't have had a funeral. And number two, nobody could have come. So I buried her here in South Carolina, where I lived and where I'm going to be buried. But here's the point of the story. There is nobody alive, very few, maybe 1, 2, or 3, in Alexandria or somewhere. Nobody alive will come into that cemetery looking for me or my wife, because they never knew us. Or either they're dead and gone. Had an old folks home they put there. Boy, we're growing. Had an old folks home. Fact is, Mr. Melder, the deputy sheriff, he would come to my mother's house 1.5 miles there away every day and sit in front of our house till he could see if my mother was stirring or not, because she was living by herself. And he'd go and stand there, sit there in his car, and when he saw her moving about, then he left. I went to that nursing home when Mr. Melder was dying, and I prayed for him. I remember tears came to his eyes. Hey, the nursing home is no longer in business. The last I noticed, the old building was still there. Hyacinth has quit spreading, I guess. And I hope it's not falling back in the arms of time. But you will always have Hyacinth. You know, Camp Clayton, if you go right in front of the Johnson store, if you're coming from Alexandria, you turn left, you go to Camp Clayton. Most of you never heard of Camp Clayton. You should know about Camp Clayton because it probably won the war, the Second World War. Because that's where they trained troops. That's where they trained people. And of course, they worked the woods all around us, like I think I've already told you. But here's something unique. Of course, I'd have to be there to show you. When Camp Clayton disbanded, they told all the community, all the people around, they could come in and tear down any of the buildings they wanted to. And a lot of the homes were made out of lumber, out of the buildings that once was Camp Clayton. Now, as far as I know, all of the homes are gone. But I know where there is still some lumber nailed up that came from Camp Clayton. It ought to be worth, no telling what it ought to be worth. Somebody said one time, a preacher told me, old Brother Gregory, he said, one splinter off the ark would be worth $1 million. Why, a splinter off of that Camp Clayton lumber ought to be worth something for all Camp Clayton did. Everybody that gets on computers, go ahead, look up Camp Clayton. Well, okay. We'll talk more tomorrow. I've got some more things to tell. I want to tell you tomorrow, I think I want to tell you about Claudius Johnson. Claudius Johnson. Remember that name. God bless.